So let me get my timer out, and I'll just read down through here. Gary Floyd will be first. So Gary, if you'll go ahead and come up here. So again, one thing I'll preface, we know that we've had this policy for several months, and we know everybody knows how everybody else feels, so you don't necessarily need to say that. You can just say what you want to say, but really I just want us to have peace in here today if we can, and really just honor the process, and our hearts are to make the libraries as good as they possibly can be for our children and for the adults and the patrons. So, so we want to make sure that we're respectful and throughout the whole process. So we understand it. It's a very serious subject. So that's okay. We're all here. We're adults. We can talk. We can reason together. So that's all okay. So Gary, you'll start us out.
Our children.
Oh, also
Gary Floyd. I'm at 304 Madeira Place.
There you go. So address, name and address, please.
Should our children are very important. I was under the impression that it should be the goal of Sumner County Public Library through its collection policies and areas designated for and accessible by minors to meet the educational, informational, and recreational needs of the community, including its children. Here are the 2026 quick facts for Sumner County. Reading proficiency, 47%. Science proficiency, 52%. Math proficiency, 50%. Perhaps it's best to focus on literary skills that build critical thinking, problem solving, and discernment, and not be obsessed about gender identity and pronouns. The literacy numbers suggest that we have a lot of growth opportunity in this area. How you preserve our attention on issues that impact their ability to be successful and engaged in our society. Our community library system is one of the tools we have at our disposal to assist in this area. Thank you very much. Good to you.
Anyone else who goes speak significantly speak louder? Thank you.
Chris Gillespie.
Hi, I am Chris Gillespie. My address is 1237 Overton Circle in Clear Beach Plantation. I support the collection development and management policy document. Page 3 reads, in curating its collection, the Sumner County Public Library takes seriously its obligation not to include sex acts, sexually explicit, or graphic materials within the children and young adult sections, or within the reach of minors, or any that a minor might have access to, or in areas that are not under the supervision of a library employee. This is to ensure that children cannot obtain these materials while in the library without express permission of a parent or legal guardian. Many opposed to the passage of this policy have used biblical context like Genesis 19 as a reason to allow graphic, sexually explicit information to minors. The presentation of this passage was mischaracterized as a reason to include sexually explicit materials in the library. In reality, Genesis 19 is a story of why Sodom and Gomorrah suffered epic consequences for its lewd sexual violence and its wickedness. While the story is appropriate for adults, it's beyond the ability of most youth to fully understand the concept of this passage. In my opinion, the difference between the truth of God's Word and the deception of today is there are eternal consequences at play versus a perceived infringement on First Amendment rights that protect harmful, divisive, or sexually inappropriate materials. God's Word is the absolute truth, can be shared with all ages. Thank you.
Amen.
James Lesage. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
My name is James Lesage, and I live in 5 Hollerman in Gallatin. In 2021, my wife and I felt called to move our family north from South Florida to Middle Tennessee. There and here, our Sunday routine was always the same. We would go to church, have brunch, and visit a library or Barnes & Noble with our 3 children, 16, 10, and 8 years old. They are all avid readers. Over time, however, we found the children's sections of the public library in Sumner County were, shall we say, dicey. We quite frankly could not trust that they could peruse without coming upon something shocking, confusing for their young minds, or outright explicit. We did not have the same issue at the Barnes & Noble in Hendersonville, so it was there we consistently frequent instead. When that location closed in 2023, it was a bit of a small crisis for us. What were we to do? Like many parents in Sumner County, our goal is to continue to cultivate a love of reading our children by surrounding them with books as much as possible. Because we believe reading is not merely a healthy habit, it is cognitive weightlifting that leads to more expansive and independent thinking. After much prayer and contemplation, we determined that there was no location filled with books safe enough for our children to browse newly used titles, then we would create one for them, as well as for every other member of the community seeking physical copies of books in an environment crafted for their comfort and enjoyment. It soon became clear this was why God called us to relocate to Sumner County. We are no Barnes & Noble, not yet, but the Hunter R. Costa Cafe in Gallatin is filled with classics such as Where the Wild Things Are, modern favorites such as Diary of a Kid, as well as an assortment of other titles that are appropriate for any age, mindfully stocked in the proper sections. Let me close by saying this. As a lifelong registered independent, I can tell you that what we're discussing is not a partisan issue. This is about basic decency. Folks dealing with any facet of sex, even if it includes exploration of orientation or identity, do not belong in this section meant for small children, period. The innocent insisting to place these titles is an overt attempt to dictate when topics are introduced to children, and that decision should be solely up to each individual child's parents or guardians, not the county. Our library should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonnet, Pentecost.
Pentecost 222, Fire Drive, Gallatin. I'm on the collection of element management policy, page 3, policy for protecting children from harmful, sexually explicit material in the library. It shall be the goal of the Sumner County Public Library through its collection policies in areas designed for and accessible by minors to meet the educational, informational, and recreational needs of the community, including its children. The library shall adhere to TCA 3917914. This is to ensure that children cannot obtain these materials while in the library without the express permission of a parent or legal guardian that is on premises of the library. If a parent or guardian wishes to allow a minor to access such materials, then the materials must first be checked out by the parent or guardian and they can distribute them. This is not a ban, this is a safeguard. I am a mother of 3 and grandparent of 2 and 1 on the way. When I raised my children and now it's my grandkids come and visit, we routinely have processes to protect them. Safety plugs for outlets, locks on cabinet doors, gates at the stairs, right? Our society has safeguards. Seat belts, booster seats to protect them while they're in cars as we drive. There are ratings on movies. There are ratings on video games and websites to help stay away from inappropriate material. There are parental controls on phones to block access to questionable sites and online predators. Our schools have a policy, and I just checked with my friend today to make sure. To take a simple Tylenol, a 17-year-old has to have parental consent. One Tylenol, not a book that can be read over and over again and mess with minds. Okay, safeguards are necessary. There's safeguards to when you can smoke, when you can drink, when you can choose to join the armed forces. Safeguards. I see removing harmful and sexually explicit material from a minor's reach as a reasonable accommodation for the patrons who visit the library. This would be a great benefit to families looking to provide a safe learning environment for all. Thank you for your time and your service to our community.
Ian Alcoff, sorry.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Alcoff, Woodbury Court in White House. Library boards and librarians are struggling, caught between one side claiming First Amendment rights and the other side claiming the corruption and perversion of children. There are federal and state laws specifically prohibiting obscenity involving minors with hefty fines and imprisonment. In 1973, the Supreme Court ruled in Miller versus California that obscene materials are not automatically protected by the First Amendment. Why would these same standards at some point not apply to public libraries? Some states have passed legislation subjecting librarians to fines and possible imprisonment for allowing explicit materials on bookshelves. The trend comes as officials seek to define terms such as obscene and harmful. Many of the conflicts involve materials promoting human trafficking, pornography, CRT, divisive concepts, LGBTQ+ themes. And while no librarian or educator has been jailed to date, the threat alone has led to more self-monitoring. In 2024, lawmakers in more than 15 states, including Tennessee, introduced bills to impose harsh penalties on libraries or librarians. These bills introduced a range of measures to impair the abilities of libraries, library staff, and library boards to acquire and provide controversial or harmful material, resources, and programming to their communities. The tide is turning, and the once silent majority is losing its complacency and finding its voice. We will continue to see more legislation. We need to give the librarians a policy to navigate these potential minefields. Please pass this policy for the librarians. And to the librarians, may I suggest, if in doubt, please just leave. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Would this be considered disrespectful to those that have the floor? Very distracting.
Yeah, I would appreciate y'all lowering the votes when somebody's up there speaking. It's just, it's kind of like lower them all the way down where we, I'm not sure why those are even here. It's just kind of bringing a little confusion to the room. I know y'all are being respectful about it, but,
Book you're trying to ban.
excuse me?
It's a book you're trying to ban.
We're not trying to ban any books. Lorraine Captionado.
So my name is Lorraine Coconato. I'm a pastor. I live on Aberley Circle in Hendersonville, and I have seen child after child after child over the years that has been exposed to illicit, documentation in books. They used to bring their textbooks up to me at the pulpit before I would preach, and they'd say, "Look, Pastor Lorraine, look what we have to learn at school." And I was traumatized. I had no idea that was happening. And this was in California. I did explain it to the parents. The parents got proactive. And the Bible says that the children, permit the children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God. What are we doing to our children? Besides what I just said, I want to tell you a quick story of a woman named Grace, who I knew very well. She was programmed as a child to be a sex object. She was shown pictures. She had to have sex with everyone her mother had sex with, that she had to have sex with them from 4 years old on. I met her at 20 years old. This woman was so fractured. This woman was so broken. Consistent nightmares, physiological problems. She had problems socially. She couldn't function. Her whole life was a mess until right before she turned 50. She gave her life to Jesus Christ. And Jesus saved her, healed her, and for 1 year of her life she lived in peace, and then she passed away. So it was horribly traumatic. I prayed with her for years. She kept saying, "I'm not worthy of God. I don't want to have God in my life. I'm dirty. I'm filthy." No self-esteem. This is what happens to children when they're exposed to these kinds of, I'm going to call pornographic visions, things that they're seeing and shown at a young age. Thank you.
I am exactly the person who you spoke about. I am her. That's real me. What you're doing.
Brian Gillespie.
My name is Brian Gillespie. I live in Overton Circle in
library is a magical place. I remember as a child riding my bike to the library and spending hours in the children's section, exploring and discovering and, you know, finding new ideas and a way to expand myself. I really want my grandchildren to have that same experience. Unfortunately, with some of the materials that are in the children's section, I have to kind of hover over them and take away that freedom of discovery. I'm not asking that books be banned. I'm just asking that inappropriate books be to the adult section. That way, if a parent wants to expose their child to that, that's fine. They can do that on their own. But we should keep the children's section for children. I want to be able to bring my grandchildren into there and just watch them discover all the things that I did, that magic that you have at the library. I'm not sure why some people will insist on having inappropriate materials in the children's section. I think that this is a great compromise. It doesn't stop people from accessing the information. But I would ask that the group pass the collection, development, and management policy to make sure our children can have that same magic that I had as a child in the library. Thank you.
Jay Ritterbeck.
Thank you, Jay Ritterbeck, 349 Lola Lane, Cottontown. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I emailed you guys and all the board last month a series of documents that contained recommended edits. I think there were 4 or 5 documents, including matrix, a couple matrices. Those edits build on a strong foundation already, while making the policy clearer, narrower, and much more legally robust. It starts with a clear commitment to intellectual freedom and viewpoint neutrality, ensuring no books are removed simply because somebody dislikes the content. That's consistent with Board of Education versus PICO. We define the revisions define sexually explicit materials using Miller v. California, and also Tennessee Code Annotated, which has a harmful to minors test. This definition also excludes educational, historical, or religious works like the Bible, even if those contain graphic language, because it's not intended to titillate or arouse. It's just history or based on something else. We protect children from truly harmful material by keeping it in an adult section. I think the version is bulletproof, honestly, protecting the children without violating any constitutional rights, and also discourages any kind of legal challenge because it's based on already tested cases. It respects parental responsibility, adult access, rule of law, and it does not ban books. However, it's a starting point wherever you guys want to go with it. I put it out there just as kind of context and something to build from. So, thank you.
Jana Novak. Right.
I am Jana Nowak. I live on Jameson Place in Hendersonville. I support the proposed collection and development policy as it strives to provide materials that conform to current law and removes information that is harmful. Trump signed Executive Order 14168 titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. This order requires the federal government to recognize only 2 unchangeable sexes, male and female. It also prohibits the use of federal funds to promote transgender ideology. Furthermore, the United States Supreme Court upheld Tennessee's law that prohibits medically transitioning minors. In addition, in February of this year, a detransitioner in New York City, Fox Varian, just won a $2 million lawsuit against her doctors. At the age of 16, she underwent a double mastectomy as she transitioned from a biological girl to identifying as a boy. The surgery occurred a year after she began meeting with a psychologist and started questioning her gender. At 19, she finally stopped identifying and presenting as male and has since considered herself a woman, but an incomplete one. There are currently pending multiple lawsuits nationwide from transitioners who medically transitioned and have suffered irreparable harm, including inability to have children, nurse children, or have a normal sex life. This flood of legal challenges are coming from former minors who felt they were led astray by disinformation. I support the policy that removes the disinformation. Thank you so much for your time.
Anita Rainey.
Hi, Anita Rainey, Portland, Tennessee, 80 Wade Road. I'll open with a quote. We need to teach our children how to think, not what to think. Based on that quote, I cannot believe that any freedom-loving American wants to hand over the raising and teaching of their child to the government, whether local or federal. It's our right and our own responsibility to keep our children physically and emotionally safe. It's not the right or responsibility of the government to legislate morality or to dictate what we can or cannot read. So here in Sumner County, we rely on you, our library board, to protect us from any group who would rob us of those rights and privileges. Those who have repeatedly asked the libraries to take on this task may wish to approach the child's curiosity as an opportunity for teaching and sharing your own beliefs or on any given subject. We all know that to try to hide anything from a child, that child only inspires to find it, leaving them at risk of getting bad information rather than what you would say. So in your consideration of this collection policy, please trust your library directors and staff to continue to do their jobs without fear of overzealous retribution, knowing that they too want the best for Sumner County's kids. We already know that a librarian has lost her job for refusing to remove books from her library, not in this county, but if it could happen there, it could happen here.
Mandy Cook.
Hi, I'm Mandy Cook. I live in Hendersonville. And, at the beginning of this meeting, I heard you say that you want libraries to be a great place for our kids. And to me, that's allowing a full range of human experience to exist within the library. And I, as a parent, should have the decision what that spectrum includes. I think all of us can agree on things that are obscene. There are things that we all could agree fit into that category, but there is a difference of opinion on what qualifies as obscene to some people. Being trans or queer is not obscene. It's not to me. And my freedom to choose what book I might take out of the library shouldn't be determined by you, because obviously there is a difference of opinion there. And what the book is about, since I guess there's some confusion, the day after Riley was appointed, Johnny Garrett went online and demonized this book, which is just about a kid getting dressed up in his parents' clothes. That's all it is. It's not obscene. Johnny Garrett went online and he lied. He said that this book was in circulation at a library, and it was not. It wasn't. But it was a political stunt because Riley had just become chair. And I am so sick of people that I care about being demonized for a political war. You know, this is, how small and weak do you have to be when librarians are the people that you're targeting? That's all. Let it be known I'm not chair of the board, nor do I want that job. Thank you, Mike. Actually.
Brooklyn, right? Sorry, Brooklyn.
No, you're okay.
I said white, but it didn't come out right.
Okay. Firstly, it is a First Amendment right to assemble, which we're doing here today, and holding a book is just an expression of that. We're not interrupting the meeting. I live at on Sunset Drive in Gallatin, and I'm Brooklyn White. So, now there's a lot of opinions about transgender people, but transgender people are people. Gender diverse people are people. Personal vendettas, propaganda, ideology, agendas, content monetization, and former sporting event participation should be left at home when making decisions for our libraries if we get to be represented in elections. We're talking about our libraries. And I just want to clarify that what I have read in the drafts that have been proposed are not about relocating from the children's sections. It's about removing certain books entirely from the library. That's where the concern about content, the viewpoint restriction comes in. And other states, there have been lawsuits against library systems that have even just relocated books. Last fall, $700,000 were awarded to publishers for relocating books in a public library, and that came out of their taxpayer money. As to the language and the content of the collections policy draft further to what I just said, I have numerous concerns. There have been a multitude of edits in presented drafts. Discrepancies have presented between these drafts. I'm concerned about the removal of phrases referring to constitutionally protected language and diverse viewpoints. And this is a government body. Public libraries are government entities. They're funded by taxpayer money, and so therefore we have to adhere to those constitutionally protected language. So maybe it was just a mistake, but let's not strike that then. Also, there are the whole policy in one of the drafts that is about what happens when books are challenged has been struck. I think it's like 3 or 4 pages worth of process that it's turned to a blip. So let's fix that too.
Suzanne Bowen.
Suzanne Bowen, 1424 Carter Rock Springs Drive in Gallatin. Good afternoon. It's become obvious to the public that several members of the board have contested a policy to remove transgender material for all minors. Let me be clear, we the people, that's who we're talking about, we the people, we're talking to you as the library, recognize what some members are doing, and we're disturbed by those attempts at manipulating. For example, visual expression of disrespect or public comment supporting the policy. Unwillingness to review the draft policy, even though the board had months to do so. In March, you demanded a work study session to discuss what should have been discussed in the March meeting. You failed the very purpose of this meeting, which is to discuss policy. The individuals have dominated the conversation, dragged out discussions, not really making any substantive points, and you dismiss comments from those who disagree with you concerning wanting the policy. You think we don't know your agenda, but we do. We get it. The public understands. And we want that to change. We ask that you stop trying to play your game, please. Also, the book being hailed by others today is the reason why parents don't want these books in the library. A 3 or 4-year-old child running around the house naked is a pedophile less than 3. Let me be honest with you. By that age, children should know how to honor their bodies in unashamed manners.
Jesse McKinney.
All right, so I want to say happy anniversary, you guys. It has been 1 year that I've been attending your meetings and speaking out against this. Aren't you proud of what we've accomplished in the last year? I'm not. So congratulations, you can look back. I think I have like 47 emails pulled up here that I've sent you since then. So I just want to read from my very first email last April, when this proposed changes to the current collections policy came through. I said, I do not support the changing of wording to remove the library's goal to present a balanced collection that features access to a variety of viewpoints, or the changes to the section entitled Censorship and Access. As a taxpayer-funded institution, public libraries may not censor or selectively deny patrons access to viewpoints and ideas which the library board does not agree with or support. That's a fundamental principle of our Bill of Rights. Another thing I wrote was, I do not support the addition of the section entitled Transgender and Gender Confusion Materials, which requires the removal of all materials with transgender characters and or information about gender identity from the entire library, not just children. That is also viewpoint restrictions. Trans people, they are our family members and they live in our community, and I don't care what you think about them, and you shouldn't care what I think about them, but they exist and they deserve to have information about them available in the library. I'll also say that the current policy that was passed in November 2024 has a robust section about sexually explicit and protecting minors from that material. That is already currently in the policy. When I visit the Hendersonville Library, which is my library, I see signs in the shelves that say, books in this section, you must be 18 years or older to check out. I see red stickers on those books that say, you must be 18 years or older to check out this book. That protection is already there. We're talking about books like this. This is not sexually explicit. Our librarians already went through a review of all of their collections for age appropriateness. They determined which books they felt needed to be removed and reshelved, and if at all you discussed that, that's done. This is not what we're talking about.
Lily Gunn.
Today, I think it's really important to talk about how some books are promoting children being sexually and romance-minded, with an emphasis on exploring gender identity and sexual options. If it becomes normalized for children to think sexually, the next step is for pedophilia to be acceptable too. When sexual activity happens, the hormone oxytocin is released to promote intense emotional bonding. This very same chemical is released when a woman first sees her baby. Young people outside of healthy marriages are typically too immature to treat their partners with mature love, good communication, understand the severity and health complications that can be had, and handle the type of responsibilities that come with sex. Bad soldiers are made, breakups happen, causing emotional strife. These people would benefit from counseling, which can be too expensive or hard for some people to obtain. These people may get married later, but are desensitized to the bonding experience due to mistrust and past hurts. Some people even turn to the opposite gender than the person that hurt them because the other person hurt them. Their marriages lack enthusiasm, commitment, and trust, and the level of love and open-heartedness that's found in hoped for. A lot of youth express their hurt from failed sexual relationships in immature ways. At Mont Haven, in the art place in Hendersonville, I've seen murals with drawings depicting slitting their boyfriend's throat and guys saying, I love you, while holding a knife behind their back. Some youth choose to get revenge by spreading humiliating information about people at school, which leads to bullying, depression, and suicide. I've seen the disappointment my sister has endured when her close friend would rather insist on sneaking off to secretly talk about the inappropriate romance novels she read and about the inappropriate ones she is writing instead of swimming and playing water games with her. I've seen the sadness when my brother had to lose a close friend because he was having a rough time with that same problem. I hope that, yeah.
Michelle Gunn.
I've seen the distress my child heard that his good friend was taken to live somewhere else by the police because he was found to be secretly exploring pornography and molesting his younger sister. In another case, my child also had to suffer shock and intense sadness when he found out that his next closest friend had downloaded the Discord app and was taking pictures of himself in his mother's dresses and sending them to gay adult transvestite pedophiles. Trying to cope with adjusting to the fact that these people aren't healthy friends to invest in is very heartbreaking for kids. Children have hormones and instincts that naturally start guiding them to sexual ways of thinking, but children need help staying busy with learning and experiencing age-appropriate things instead of enforcing being consumed with genitals and sex. They need to have adult role models that will help guide their life in healthy paths and counsel them out of their insecurities and heal from traumas. Children who are sexual can only turn to their youth friends that can get pregnant too young or give them STDs, pornography, internet predators, their younger siblings, or their pets, which is even easier to do if the woke culture has encouraged you to identify as a furry. None of these are good options. These paths are steeped in confusion about the meaning of their identity, purpose in life, and shameful ways that are dangerous to their health, safety, and future. LGBTQ lifestyle choices are unacceptable to God and most of society. This makes them have to cling to like-minded individuals that only bring them deeper into emotional problems and early death if they decide to physically transition. This woke movement is traumatizing individuals, breaking up families, and deeply hurting our society by exposing kids to be sexually minded. After transitioning, the statistics show these people greatly regret it and are more depressed and displeased with their life because that wasn't the answer to their identity crisis, which can be only found in Jesus and the Bible.
Angela Roberts.
Hi, my name is Angela Roberts. I live at 171 Chippendale Drive in Hendersonville, and I want to take this moment to thank you for serving on this board. I don't envy your responsibility to ensure that we have a safe place for people and kids to come and read books and enjoy them. As an educator of many years, I've had that same kind of responsibility with looking at the literature in my classroom, the songs, the books, and things that I use. And it's a tough decision which ones you do and which ones you don't. One of the hardest I had to make was teaching guitar class and I found a perfect song that played an E minor chord, very simple, all the way through. And I got to listening to the song, I go, from the Hunger Games. My daughter loved it. I loved the song. And as I listened to it, just couldn't get past one preposition that turned it into a song of let's go commit suicide. I didn't want that responsibility of that thought put into the high school education. Although they probably have chosen and listened to that song over and over again, I didn't want that responsibility in the school of putting that in the brain. And so you need to look diligently at these books that are out there and make sure that they are appropriate, that you're not putting ideas into kids' minds that weren't there already. So another one I'm thinking of that I've used, you've all heard of Maurice Sendak, correct? Love his books, have most of them, including one I probably shouldn't. But you know, I've done things with Where the Wild Things Are with music instruments with the younger kids and playing up that whole library. There's even an opera version of it that's absolutely
Joanna Daniels.
Hi, Joanna Daniels, 152 Shadow Haven Way, Norris. I just wanted you to start off by saying that I was the one that actually brought forward Fred Gets Dressed. I brought it forward in a library board meeting in early 2025. And I was actually the one that talked about it all over the radio on the Chris Hand show. So don't, I just want to make sure Johnny Garrett can get out of jail for that because it was actually me. So, my policy that I brought forward last year in April was to get all of these books completely out of the libraries, not to move them into another section. Okay, because people always talk about children. What about teenagers?
Teenagers can go to anywhere in the library. They're the most unsupervised minors in the library. If you just move them to another section, it's just going to go there. They're going to go there. They're going to know exactly where to find these books. It is our tax dollars. It is not a constitutional right to use our tax dollars to purchase books that have it so that it actually infiltrates and causes harm to a community. These are tax dollars. It is not a First Amendment right. First Amendment rights are so that I can get up and talk, okay? It's not protection over a governmental entity. We don't use taxes to make transgender, to fund transgender theater or movies or anything. The policy is to get the books out of the library, completely out of the library. Don't move them because people can go and get them. Trump said, do not use our money to fund this. Riley has already suffered from this crazy mental dilemma. So, you know, this is your job, not the library directors. This is your job. The buck stops with you guys. So if there is something harmful in those libraries, it's your fault, and it is your job to make them not be there. You oversee the funding for these books. It is your job. Don't be weak.
All right, that concludes our public comment section. One thing I guess I would like to say, if you guys want to stay, you can. You want to hear what we talk about, that's great. We welcome you to be here. I would ask that you not disrupt the meeting, please. No comments, no moans and groans, none of those kinds of things. Just be here, be present. I appreciate that. And we'll start talking about this policy. And if you have something to say, just keep it to yourself, or go out in the hall and say it, or whatever. But just please don't disrupt the meeting. So if there's any disruptions, I will ask you to leave, or I'll have you taken out of the room. Okay? So just please do that for us, and we appreciate that. All right. Hey guys.
Hey, Mike. Hello.
So we are going to talk about the collection policy. First thing I think I would like to do is just hear from each of you, uninterrupted. Just kind of go around. I know everybody's had this policy, for months now. Probably have read it to pieces and understand it, and find the little places that you like and the little places that you don't like. So I would just like to ask each person to give me an idea, and again, there's no voting at this meeting. It's just us at this table, as a friend of mine said, it's just us at this table. So we're not going to make any life-altering decisions, but if we can just share with each other what we think about the policy. If there's a certain section you want to highlight, that would be great, just so I can kind of get an idea about where you guys stand. So, let me start with you. We can kind of go clockwise around.
I'm Erica Grammer, and I have shared a lot of my thoughts on this for the last year. I've been on the board that whole time, and I even brought, I was the chair at the time of last meeting, so like I intended this to be discussed a month ago, brought papers for that. I do want to say to the board that, and to you, that I am not a person who, I'm not coming from a place of hating on anyone, nor, I really love people. That is something that I do.
whether I'm here in front of the camera, behind the scenes, on a phone call. I love on people. I do a lot of loving on people who struggle with a lot of things, who are on the darker struggles of life, of worrying and struggling through and having to fight for their own lives. And so for me, when it comes to this subject, and I mean, it's the whole subject, it's the whole policy, so, but when it comes to the trans subject, the reason why I'm protective about it, and yes, I am a believer, yes, I will say that I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I say that without any apology with that at all. I do not believe everybody has to believe what I believe. I actually believe in people having the freedom of thought. When I am sitting here troubleshooting through struggles that I see and hear with the many people that I live on, the trans conversation is a very common conversation. And so, like, there are a lot of people in my life that have struggled with anorexia and bulimia. I would never say, I affirm that you are a fat person, because that is what they believe about themselves. I would never do that. It would actually be detrimental for them. If I have, and I've had friends that struggled through believing they were animals of different types, I would be a bad friend if I affirmed somebody that was struggling with thinking that they were a bird. If I sat there and affirmed that they could fly, and they jumped off of a tall place and got hurt, I would not be being a very good friend or very responsible for them in a healthy way. And so, like, when it comes to this subject, I know that for the last year, actually the last 3 years, on other subjects and subjects around this, I have been talked about in a way like I'm a hateful person. I've been talked about like I'm trying to put my beliefs on somebody. But what I believe should be protected is, yes, children, yes, teenagers, yes, adults, from books that support an ideology and thought process that can be damaging, to a place of hating themselves so badly that they actually damage themselves and their body. So, yes, I do believe scriptures. Yes, I do believe those things. But that is not what my standpoint is in this at all. I mean, it is, but it's not what I'm pushing forward. It's about when we teach people, when we put materials out that represent knowledge that teaches people of all ages, young, old, that they are indeed something that is different than who they are, is dangerous. And so that is my standpoint. I mean, I could sit here and go line by line, because anything in green in here is what I've said, that I have presented to the board. But that is where I come from. And I mean, I have other thoughts that I'd love to share, but I just wanted, like, that is the thing that I'd like to share. Thank you. And again, thank you, Erica, for your service as board formerly. We really appreciate you, and of course, Mike, thank you. Look, I know there's a lot of people who don't like me. That's the nature of the position that I have found myself in. I hear the comments, I see the things online. The reality is, I'm not a provocateur. I'm really not. I didn't join this board to start controversy or to insert myself or to do anything other than defend what I know to be true, the things that I believe in. I have a little daughter now. She's 6 months old. Of course, we don't have to worry about her going to the libraries yet, but I want her to be able to enjoy that same magic that we spoke about. And I also agree with Erica. There's so much love in my heart. So much so that I'm willing to say the truth. So much so that I'm not willing to affirm the lie that you're correct to feel as if you're born wrong. That is a really horrible message that we're sending to young people or adults for that matter, that they're correct to feel as if they're born in the wrong body. Think about how detrimental that is to hear, how deceitful it is, how discouraging it is, how destructive it is. It's a lie that ultimately could lead to young people or again adults cutting off healthy functioning body parts. It's a really horrible thing. It's no wonder, I say this with a very sad and tragic heart, there's such a high suicide rate amongst this demographic. They're being told to believe they're correct to feel as if they're born wrong. I want to reinforce the idea, the fact, that they were created intentionally and uniquely in God's perfect image, and how amazing is it that we have a creator who doesn't make mistakes. That's where I'm coming from on this. As it pertains to the policy, I think, of course, we should look at some of the red lines that Erica has put through that we didn't get through last time. I think we should consider Jay. He has sent us several emails over the past few months, probably much longer than that. I've been involved with this board the past few months. Some of the things that he writes in terms of what is legally sound, I think we should consider. I have the President's executive order right here. I have a couple copies. My printer only got off 3 before it ran out of paper, so if you guys want to read these, I have them here. If you want to do this, I've got it highlighted here. The first part of this executive order is merely definitional. So he defines words that we likely never knew we would have to define, such as sex, such as male, female, man, woman, gender ideology. Gender ideology is defined as this. I'm just going to read this subsection in one more piece. It says, gender ideology replaces the biological category of sex with an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity, permitting the false claim that males can identify as and thus become women and vice versa, and requiring all institutions of society to regard this false claim as true. Gender ideology includes the idea that there is a vast spectrum of genders that are disconnected from one's sex. Gender ideology is internally inconsistent in that it diminishes sex as an identifiable or useful category, but nevertheless maintains that it is possible for a person to be born in the wrong sex body. If you flip the page, we've got subset G here that says, federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology. As is, each agency shall assess grant conditions and grantee preferences and ensure grant funds do not promote gender ideology. This is an executive order from the President. So federal law is very clear. We've heard things about federal law, making sure we're following. That is what federal law is. As it pertains to state law, we also received, as a board, specifically to Mike and to Gabby Cato, addressed to the Gallatin Public Library of Sumner County, we received a letter from Trey Hargett, who is the Secretary of State here in the state of Tennessee. I'm not going to read it, it's 2 pages long. I'm just going to focus on the third paragraph here. He says, I want to do all that I can do to ensure that local decision-making for materials purchased with state and federal funds remains intact. And I need your help as a board to ensure that the decisions around collection purposes are in accordance with all applicable laws and the regional library system's library service agreement. He makes it very clear, it is not the job of the library directors, it is our job as a board. That is why we were appointed, that is why we are here, that is why there is so much frustration from both sides here, both sides of this issue, that we have been at this as a board, myself for the past few months, for, gosh, what, a year, more than now? That's why there's so much frustration that from both sides that we haven't been able to get anything done. It is not the job of the directors. We do not need to task them with anything else. They have enough on our plates. We quite frankly do not. We don't. It is our job as library board members to make sure we are passing a policy. Whatever that policy may be, I have made my stance very clear, a place that has come from a position of love. I love this little boy in the back who's holding this book. I love this girl who spoke so bravely up here. I love you so much that I'm willing to speak the truth that there are only 2 sexes. That is the message that should be reinforced to children. Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
I just wanted to work on the policy together as a board. Thank you.
Couple things. Does everybody have a copy of the November 24 policy? Everybody's got that? Okay, there's extra copies here if you need it. Good. Thank you. You need one? There's more here if you want to keep off.
That's confirmed that that's current.
Yeah.
I know there's one.
That's the current policy. There's the last three. There,
It's what we got last meeting.
no. This is the current policy.
What has been voted on and approved.
And what approved in, November 2010.
This is edit of that. This.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Just a couple of quick things. I appreciate everyone's comments here. It's clearly everybody has very deeply held feelings and positions about all these issues. Listening to all of your comments, I can't help but remember what happened most recently on this board, where the directors identified several books in their libraries that were in response to Secretary Carget's order, and the board approved their decisions as to what to do with them. A lot of those books went on a resource shelf. Am I correct, directors? Those of you that are in here. So I kept listening to it. It seems like that system has solved a lot of everyone's issues. There's already a policy here about sexually harmful materials in the library. So I'm hearing everyone's concerns, but we just audited tens of thousands of books in the children's section, and this is what they found. And they brought them before the board, and the board said, okay, yes, do put these, what are you going to do with these? And then we signed off on it and sent the letter to the Secretary of State. So I think a lot of this could be solved with a very simple addition into the policy that the directors are authorized to establish a resource shelf, because they've already done it, frankly, that they can put books that might be of sensitive topics. Because the other thing is, I understand a lot of people in here have very strong opinions about this, but we all live in a community together. We all live in this community together, and we all have our own opinions. The public library serves everybody. It serves everybody, and the public library cannot have an opinion. Now let's talk about the executive order, because I think that's very important. The executive order is redundant because of 2 CFR 200. Does anyone at the table know what 2 CFR 200 is? I wouldn't expect anybody would know what it is, because it's one of those bureaucratic things that only people who've worked with federal grants for 20 plus years have ever even heard of, and we don't even like to talk about it. What it is, it's the guidelines for how federal re-grant dollars are spent. That's important to us in Sumner County because we are the recipients of federal re-grant dollars. We get money from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, goes to the Tennessee State Library and Archives. They are granted that money from the federal government. They then re-grant it to libraries around the state. That's what we get. 2 CFR 200 says that you cannot use federal dollars to advocate for any position. Doesn't matter what that position is. You can't use it to advocate for it. So what do? For a public library, we don't advocate for positions. We are a collecting institution that has a broad range of information that the community is requesting. That's what's in the policy right now that we have. That's what we do. We have this information. It's not promoting, it's not advocating. We're not using federal dollars to violate anything. That's the way it works. And you don't have to take my word for it. Ask the state librarian. He said it on that call we were on. That's his interpretation of this. I think we're fine in terms of this stuff. So the question is, what do we do when there's a sensitive book that people are worried about in the community? I don't like this idea. I don't have a problem with Fred gets stressed. But I live in a community with people who do. So how do we solve that problem? We have to have a compromise. And when you come here and you say, it's got to be all or nothing this way, it's not going to work in our community. It's got to be all or nothing this way. It's not going to work in our community. What's the cleanest, easiest compromise? And it's this. Just authorize the resource shelf. And we know it worked because they just did it, and it worked. It worked. Have you guys had complaints since this? Okay. Let's give it a try. That's how I think. Now, in terms of working on the policy, I'm all for working on it. There are 2 points on here that I'm fine with. There's 1 point that I think needs a little massaging. The rest of it, we can't do, and I can go through ad nauseum till midnight tonight about why. I'm happy to. I'll stay here. But that's how I feel about it. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you, Paul.
I took some time, coming back from Texas when we saw my daughter over Easter, to reread our bylaws and policies and make some notes. And then once I had read it, I compared it to what Erica had shared with us last time, because I wanted to get a clean picture of what we had had in place before, and then compare it to what changes were wanting to be made. And then I looked up Williamson County's collection development policy, Knox County's collection development policy, Wilson County's collection development policy, and Davidson County's collective development policy. And I have to say that I liked theirs better, a lot better, because I didn't feel like it was divisive. And Williamson County and Wilson County both have sections that say very strongly it is the parent's decision what the child checks out. Wilson County says determining the appropriateness of materials for minors is the sole responsibility of the parent or guardian. And that's essentially what Williamson County says. Well, and I mean, I'm a person who was very strict about what my children were exposed to, as much as I could control that. But some of the concerns that people have expressed, I don't feel like fit at this doorstep. I don't think they apply to us necessarily. Are they right in them saying that those things that they spoke of are harmful? Absolutely, 100%. But I don't know that they fit with us at our doorstep. So that's kind of my take. And if I could have my way, and I realize that that may not happen, I would like for us just as a group to start with what we already have in place, what has already been approved, and just look at it section by section and discuss as a group together. Is there anything here that you think needs to be adjusted, taken away, or added, and not focus so much on this? There are several things in here that I think don't go in the collection development policy. They would be better in the bylaws in a separate area. I don't think they really fit here. I think it would be really beneficial if we could, as a group, compare what some of those other public library systems have in their collection development policy, because I'm new to the public library world, so I wanted to see what other people did. Those are my thoughts, just to kind of start from where we are and us look together to decide what we think we might need to move forward. And I would be happy to share links to the places where I went to get those other things.
Okay, and Johnson City, yours.
Okay.
That's Cecilia mentioned.
Yeah, she had mentioned that too. I forgot about that.
Thank you, Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, how y'all doing? Sorry I'm late again.
I was trying.
It was good. It was just on me. It's actually very good. I'm looking at the current policy. I'll use the current policy, and specifically the request for reconsideration procedure to appeal to the library board. And my question is, has this happened? Has this ever gotten to y'all?
No, not in the 3 or 4 years I've been at it. A lot different directors have gotten requests for reconsideration, but I don't recall the board ever visiting one of those forms.
Because it's a lot of words, but it's supposed to work like this. I find a book in the kids section that I don't like, and there should be a form available, and I fill the form out, and I hand it in, and that gets to the library director. Is this close? And the library director says, no, it looks fine. And they tell me that, they email me back. Is that the thought?
There's usually a little more help.
Yeah.
You guys don't need specifics, but like, is this happening? Does this happen once a year? Does it happen 10 times a year?
I've been here for 10 years, and until this policy went into place, I don't think I've ever seen one reconsideration.
Meaning to start the process, which is essentially like a formal complaint on the book, one time and all the time. Okay. And then this system is to, I don't want to use the term override you guys, but essentially like if you say no, it's to come up.
Appeal.
Yeah. And that was new in
that the appeal process for reconsideration is pretty common in a lot of collections policies.
Yeah.
It's written differently in some of them, but that's just kind of standard practice.
Is it on everybody's website? Does the public know about this process?
Yes. You say that again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did say that state law, just this session, that you do need to have a reconsideration policy in every public library.
So that's pretty
One, but two.
They did pass it.
Yeah, but that was already in place.
Yeah.
That was an example.
It was that law. That law was to make it state law, so every county has to have one.
So
We already have
had
one.
one. And I would venture to say.
And I have not read the law. I don't read them till they're all finished with the session, but I haven't read it, so I don't know if it requires that be published on the website.
Because most of the time, and y'all correct me if I am wrong, the patron a lot of times will just ask to speak to the director, and they'll express their concerns verbally with them, have a conversation, and then if they're not feeling good about the conversation and they want to make a more publicly record kind of thing, then they'll get a form to do, which is much like what happens in the school.
So Steve, is that the kind of the thing that you want to address when we?
I was just curious about it.
Okay.
And I have a couple things about it I would like to address.
Like what?
Well, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is if you're going to challenge a material, I want you to have read it in its entirety and look at it as a whole piece of work, not just 1 page or 5 pages. How does those 1 or 5 pages fit into the course of the story, and how does that affect the outcome of the story? It's not always unpleasant things happen to all of us, but it doesn't mean that's the end of the story. And I will say this, many people in America today only oppose a book because it's on a list. They haven't read it, they haven't read reviews, they haven't talked with other people who've read it to find out really anything other than it's on that list. And if you're going to talk to me about a book that you think should be remade, we need to have an intelligent, knowledgeable conversation about that piece of literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And we can't do that if we haven't both read it in its entirety.
Okay, let's move on to, Eric has a question, but let's move on to Pam. Go ahead.
I believe, if I remember correctly, that process you're bringing up was something that that we were required to do by regional, and that's one of the reasons why we put it in there. But also having the sexually explicit portion in there, it allowed, I think, just gave a clean way of people knowing how they can make complaints or that way. That has not been followed through as well as that could have been.
You mean being more obvious
The
about how
forms
to go
are
about
supposed to be in each of the libraries, ready to be given. We've heard many times through many emails that these were not available, that they were made to print them themselves, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's one thing that I would like to see happen, is this process is in here on purpose, so whatever it ends up being, I would like to see that be a clean process, that is the same experience in all 5 libraries. Another thing that is on that is, have you read or viewed this material?
But it doesn't say in its entirety.
Right, and that is something that could be added in the wording, but, that is a conversation point for sure. But I mean, there is accountability to that. People are either lying or they're telling the truth, but that we put on there.
Real way to approach that. Yeah, you're going to take them at their word.
Right,
right.
You can know that.
But I hope that it at least plants the seed that you need to have the whole.
All right, let's move on to Pam.
Okay, thank you. So I am in agreement with Tracy about some of the things in this policy don't need to be lumped together. That I think we should take some of the policy and separate it to have different topics. Like the collection development policy is one entity in itself. And then the other things like donations and things like that is another policy that I think that it should be separated. And what I would like to focus on firsthand is the collection development policy. And in the policy that was passed, it says that the policy for protecting children from harmful, sexually explicit material in the library is one of the main goals of the library. And when I read the code, TCA 6833-101, which is addressed in our policy, it literally says, the legislation declares that it must take action to protect the health and welfare of minors. Legislature determines that medical procedures that alter a minor's hormonal balance, remove minor's sex organs, or otherwise change a minor's physical appearance are harmful to a minor when these medical procedures are performed for the purpose of enabling a minor to identify with, live as, a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's sex, or treating discomfort or distress in a disorder. It also says the legislature determines that there is evidence that medical procedures that alter a minor's hormonal balance, remove their organs, is harmful. It goes on, almost every point says, finds medical procedures being performed and administered to minors in this state, notwithstanding risks and harms to minors. Legislature finds that it's harmful for children to be have materials that can be harmful for them. And if the medical field says that these things are harmful to minors, why would we put them in our libraries and allow kids to have their hands on them? And I understand it is a parent's responsibility. It is our responsibility. But a library is a place where kids are supposed to be able to go. I have 4 grandchildren. 7, I actually have 6, but I take 4 at a time. There's a 7-year-old. There's a 10-year-old. There's a 12-year-old, and there's a 16-year-old. They're all in different places in the library. I can't parent and be in every place in the library to make sure that what they are looking at is something that I would approve for them to look at. So am I only supposed to take 1 grandchild at a time to the library just so that I can sit there and helicopter and parent to make sure that they don't read or pick up something that they shouldn't put their hands on? So, I mean, I think our legislation is clear. The topic is harmful. And if it's harmful, it's our job to protect in public places. I mean, we wouldn't let our kids go to a playground and just play freely if we know that there's sex offenders nearby. I mean, we protect and we put things in place. So, I mean, I understand that parents have the responsibility to introduce and to teach their children what they want them to learn, and you just can't parent when you're in a library consistently because kids will wander around the library and they have access to it.
Will you repeat that code
Yes,
that you're
ma'am.
reading from?
It is TCA 6833-101. It's Health and Safety Environmental Protection. And it's
Say that again.
TCA 6833-101. I mean, in almost every A says it's harmful, B says it's harmful, C says it's harmful, all the way down. And the very last part of it is our responsibility.
Aren't the things they're referring to the medical procedures?
Yeah, but medical
I don't
procedures.
disagree with that.
My point is,
but I'm just thinking, again, to me, how is that applied to us? Because we're not advocating for medical procedures. And I will say,
that's what kids, when they read these books and they see what they're being taught, that's when they want to explore the medical procedures to have this stuff done. And it says it's harmful to do it. So it's what they read and what they get their hands on is what's introducing it to them. So that's my position, is that it's harmful for these types of procedures to be done on kids. And where are they learning it? They're learning it in the books that they read and the things that they have access to. So my position is that they don't belong in the public library. And that's what I would like to see our collection development policy reflect.
What I would like to see happen is whatever the resolution is, that it be made by us and not a third party. And there's third parties out there that'll make all these decisions for us if we get it in front of them.
Tell me what you mean by that.
I mean, if somebody goes to court, they'll tell us what to do.
Right.
If somebody goes somewhere else and files a lawsuit, they'll tell us what to do. We're better off coming somewhere where none of us don't like it as being perfect, and all of us like it a little. Then you are letting somebody else write it for you. Now, let me tell you something that I'm never going to vote for. I'm never going to vote. This is on the computer. You can go to the computer and call up Sumner County, and you can read all that's in this. You can do that if you're 10 years old, if you're 12 years old, if you're 8 years old. If you can get the computer turned on, and bless their heart, they can. They get into it. There's words in there, surely to goodness, we have enough intellects on this board, excluding me, that somebody can come up with script where we can take out some of the words that refers to body parts. Because there's everybody, I'm not going to ask that. I don't know how many people have read this, but when they got the page, I don't remember what page this is, but it's in red with green on it.
On page 4 of the revised policy, it's been reworded.
I'm not going to read it out loud, and I'm not going to vote for this policy.
Well, we read it.
And you count me as a no if the final version still has all those words included in that disposition. If I can get on the Sumner County website and call up a piece of paper that has been approved by a body of Sumner County and published as representing Sumner County on any issue that includes those kind of words, then I'm a no-vote. I don't care if the rest of it's perfect. I'm not going to do that.
Would you rather read it in this policy or see it in a library?
Neither.
Okay, none of the other public library board collection development policies I read had anything remotely like that.
You're talking about the explicit language.
And it's been rewritten. For record, I do believe that we should look at this, tighten it, and make sure, again, that we are doing our part to exclude things that do fall under sexual activity or sex acts. But I'm with you. But if you're not, I think the point I want to make is if you're not even comfortable saying these words out loud in this forum, that's exactly the reason why children shouldn't access it.
Well, I don't think anybody disagrees that children shouldn't be reading sexually explicit material. I don't think anyone at this table believes that.
No.
But I will say, when we met with Jason Ritter, state librarian, that this TCA code that we have in our policy does not apply to public libraries. It applies to public school K through 12 libraries.
Which TCO code is that one?
The 3917 914.
Okay.
So
if some outside party has, and I'm beating the dead horse, if some third party makes a ruling and hands it to us, we'll like it less than what we can come up with on our own if we'll work and push in that direction.
For us to do it.
So, having been a part of
I'm
it.
sorry, are you in our meeting? Thank you.
Can I continue now?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you're at our meeting. Thank you.
Oh, I'm at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I will continue now. I've been here through all of this. Everybody knows that my time is coming up at the end of June. I hope that's not with celebration from many, but I've been here for 3 years. I've volunteered my time and done this for almost 3 years. I've been here through the writing of this. So, I understand some of
I understand some of what you were referring to as far as some of the wording. That has been something that some people have brought up. I've said the very same thing she said as well. If we're embarrassed to say these kind of words, then we need to be very aware that these words are on our shelves, and they have been in places where kids could get to them. Now, I'm not going to take a detour from what I'm saying right now. The suggestions, okay, so the red.
Yes.
The red is something, everything red, whether it's got a line through it or not, was what Eric's office, legal office, sent to us. So what that had, these were some suggestions. So they had crossed out all this portion and had written what's in red here. And then my green is the only thing I've just kind of added in as suggestions so that it stayed true to what the intention was of what our current policy says, but also understanding the change of the words. Now, so up here, there's a lot of biology words that is in our current policy that people like to get embarrassed about. I'm not. I'm just being very considerate at the moment because of younger ears. I'm not afraid to even say those words around them. I'm just trying to be respectful. But our current policy is this portion that has the red lines through it. And what the suggestion is the less biological wording that is in with the green writing in the middle of it. So instead of, it would be right here, Larry. Instead of these 6, it should be worded to these 6. I'm trying to find.
Okay.
So it refers to, changes it to this, sexual intercourse instead of that, colorful wording. See what the difference is? It refers to physical contact instead of.
I'm a no.
But the thing is that is what's in red and crossed out is our current policy.
I know.
Which part explicitly is it, just out of curiosity, and what we can kind of work with?
I'm on this. You have this?
Yes, I have it.
Okay. All right. Number 1, out.
But when you say out, do you mean mix it?
I mean in its entirety.
So we're okay with books that have?
No.
Can we work with this policy, the actual working legal document that our library has been working under? Can we work from this?
These are just my suggestions that legal read through the red portion, and I'm the green portion of just suggestions.
That
and I am
is
allowed to
not
be
this
heard on
policy.
that.
You are allowed
to be heard on it. This is not a legal
It's a
anything.
confusion issue.
There's just a suggestion to work through.
Access it just for sake of the
I
conversation.
have all the.
Okay, hold
Okay,
on
well,
just
she's
one
allowed to
second.
speak
Let-
to,
let me-
just
let's-
as you
let's
were,
just
or
pause
anyone
for a
else.
second.
What are their suggestions here?
Yeah, let's just pause for a second. I'm going to allow Commissioner Jones to come and ask a question. So if everybody would just pay attention to him, I would appreciate it.
As commissioners, we have the privilege of speaking in a meeting if the chairman allows us to, and I appreciate that. I just want to give some clarification because, like Mr. Hinton, I too had problems with some of the language that was in the policy. Until I understood why it had to be there, it just seemed important to me that you put that in policy for everybody to see. But when I understood that these books keep popping up because the term sexually explicit is not defined anywhere, so it's in the eye of the beholder what that term means. So the policy has to define it so that you can deem it sexually explicit to get the book out of there. If you don't define it, it'll never go away because what's sexually explicit to you is not sexually explicit to her or him. So as the board, you guys have to put definitions to that term so that you can rule on it. Unless something's adjudicated, you can't take action for it.
And I was like, oh man, that's why it's got to be in there. I hated it, but it made sense to me because the term was too loose, and it became anything goes because it becomes a toss-up. It's like what is explicit, what's not explicit. It's different for different people. You decide what's explicit. This board decides. So that's the only reason I was okay with it. It's a nasty thing, and I never thought we'd be that way in this world, but it's y'all's job.
I'd vote to put it in a workbook that belongs to the manager of the library, but I wouldn't vote to put it out to the public. I don't care.
Maybe this is compromise.
No.
Not.
Okay.
The mayor won't publish it.
The other thing, like what you just said, Commissioner, that, you know, what one person defines as sexually explicit may not be another thing. Part of the process of challenge and appeal is, you know, if a book comes out, and this has happened, I've talked to people out here and said, hey, I found this book, and they brought it to a library, and the librarian was like, oh, looked at the content, oh, you're right, it shouldn't be there, we should put it elsewhere. And that's happened before, and it's been dealt with accordingly. But, you know, putting such strict definitions on things, it ignores context of all literature. This is literature we're talking about. So the context matters, what you were saying earlier. If we're going to talk about a work, you have to talk about it in its entirety, not just, you know, this one sentence on, you know, page 400 of an 800-page novel. So what the process would allow is for the challenge to go to the directors to make a determination. If the person isn't satisfied with that, then it comes to the board, and we as a body would decide whether or not that it doesn't need, and that's how you do it. I don't think you can do it with just, I mean, you defining these words, again, you could throw the baby out with the bathwater doing this kind of thing. So I disagree with that a little bit. I just want to put that out there. I think we can all say, none of us here at this table, I'm confident, want sexually explicit material in the children's section. Not a single one of us.
Of course not.
So, and when we just did this audit, I don't think it was there. So, I'm not sure what we're going to such great lengths about. It seems like we're talking about a ghost problem that we're trying to solve here. So, I think we can do that with just, you know, very similar to like establishing a resource shelf for sensitive topics where we don't have to point out a single group, which very much puts us in danger of violating the First Amendment. It really does. When you point out a single group, you're denying them a point of view. And that is what the First Amendment was written for. When we're a public library, we cater to all points of view, you know, that are legal in the United States. We cater to that. We need to present documents and present books for people who are wanting them. I think we could do something along the same lines and, you know, not allow sexually explicit material without being sexually explicit and saying so in the document. That's kind of what you're wanting, right? I would like the same thing. I think we could probably do that.
Knox County separates out and defines for you what is considered children's material. So, for example, children's material. Children's collection provides materials that serve children's educational, informational, recreational, and cultural needs from infancy through 11 years old, and for all levels of ability. The materials are selected with consideration of the stages of emotional and intellectual development of children, and with particular appeal to children in format and presentation. And it explains, in their system, they have a committee that selects books with amongst all the branches. But it talks about all the different things that they might purchase. And then it says teen materials. The library's teen collection is intended for young people ages 12 to 17. Its focus is on the recreational preferences and informational interests appropriate to teens. Teen materials, again, are selected by that committee. And they say next, which I highlighted, in addition to meeting the normal selection criteria for all materials overall, teen material is current and attractive to teen readers and include fiction and nonfiction that 1. Has believable characters, dialogue, and plot. 2. Is in demand and of high interest. 3. Helps young adults understand themselves and others. Broadens the reader's viewpoint of the world expands reading ability and enjoyment, and has a format appealing to teens. I think some of that work in separating out some of those things might be helpful to us, because I think one of the concerns I'm hearing from different people speaking is that we're trying to tell grown-ups even what they're supposed to think or have access to or not, and that's worrisome. I mean, I think that most of us would have more agreement than disagreement when it comes to the children's section and what's there. But I am also concerned because I don't feel like for all of the conversation and the worry about sexually explicit things in the children's section, have I had one person give me a single example of that happening? And maybe I've just missed that. But all the people I've heard speak at the commission that have worried over it, people I've heard speak here many times, like, give me an example of a particular children's area book that you found sexually explicit material in. Because I'm with Paul. I don't feel like, especially after having done that audit, if something had jumped past somebody, which is possible, that we wouldn't have rectified that situation. And I also wanted to reiterate, I hope when we look at the parental shelf, that is a wide variety of topics, like we discussed previously, not just a particular topic, because there are lots of hard things you have to talk to kids about, not one particular thing, and every family has some the same and some different. But I will say, in all of the policies that I looked at, none of them looked remotely like that, and they all referred back to the parent. It was the parent's responsibility to make sure whatever. And I get the caution of it, and you can only go so many places at one time. But I think ultimately, in my experience in the library, they're not. It takes more. You got to work at it. If you're going to pick up a 300-page book and you're going to try to find the 3 pages or 4 paragraphs that 2 teenagers are getting hot and heavy in the back seat or whatever, you're going to have to work pretty hard as a 10-year-old. You're going to be in the teens. I mean, there's just a lot of extra with that. But I like I said, I was very protective of my children, but I think we're overreacting.
Can I say with the...
Sorry. So I have an apology, first of all. I'm needing to leave. I had planned on being at last week's meeting and had all that scheduled wide open. I'm having to leave right now. So please excuse me for leaving. But the second thing is that, the whole thing about we can start watering, it starts feeling like we water things down if we're not very careful. When the whole purpose of policy, let me say that backwards, the whole purpose of writing policies is so that we have a very defined, very clear expectation, so that everybody's on the same page. We have 5 libraries. We are not a system, so they are separate things. So all 5 library directors need to be on the same page. Board needs to be on the same page, and it helps reflect the community. So the whole reason why, instead of acting like we should just kind of put this off, that this is not needed or not important, policy is necessary to define what can be on those shelves. The awesome thing is that as our county and as our board, we get to determine that. We happen to align with our codes and state laws and things like that, but we get to determine that as Sumner County Library Board. And so it's about, you don't create your plan when you have an emergency, which I actually think there are more things there, because I hear it often, not just in this room, and not just for the last 3 years. I've heard it so often about parents who've taken their kids ending up with a surprise book of something that was content way different than they intended for their children to ever see at those young eyes. And so I do think there is more than just preventative. I do think this is something that are books that are around in our library. And some of them have been brought up over the 3 years, and some of them have been changed over the 3 years. So, I want to give credit to that too. But policy has to be written to be very clear so that it helps them. It helps aid our library directors of what should be on our shelves of our county, so that their opinion is not caught up in that. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a protection for them. They know what is acceptable. But our board has to determine that. We have to write the policies that say that. And that's not to be exclusive. It is just to determine what will be on those shelves. And, for me, people are welcome in our library. We've heard many times how people are not, this means that certain people or certain groups are not welcome in our library. That is not what we mean. We don't mean that people who, if we're saying transgender books are not going to be on our shelves, doesn't mean that we're hating on a group of people, even though it might feel that way. I do understand how people can take it, but that is not the intention. The policy has to be written. It has to be clear. It doesn't need to be talked about for a year, 2 years. It needs to be determined. And instead of kick down the thing, I am saying this because, yes, I am coming off very soon. I have been on this for 3 years having these conversations. It needs to be determined. And we need to start putting action to it. We need to stop talking about it and just talking about it. And we need to put action to it. And finally have a set thing. And so, I need to say one clarifying thing too. The thing that we voted on last month, about the Trey Hargett thing, y'all have referred to that multiple times. And my intention with that, and why my vote went to what it went to, was to let them determine based off of policy and laws. And then I'm wanting a policy to be very clear. So yes, I do want to entrust, because we have clear policies and they have something, the directors have something clear to work off of. But what I voted on last month was to let them determine off of policy. And then I had it planned to, is on the agenda to discuss and get a policy clear. So
I just think it's interesting that none of the other systems that I looked at have anything remotely like this. I just feel like, those are prominent public library systems in our state. Conservative places, very conservative places. And there's nothing remotely that graphic. And I feel like I can trust the directors that we have to recognize what sexually explicit is and put it in an appropriate age group. I really don't think it has to be spelled out that way. And my experience in the past, helping write board policy, was that would have never flown. Our lawyer would have never let all of that kind of stuff go.
So the red writing is from our law department. So this is our current policy is legal, and that was law department just making some suggestions to some wordage of things they had heard in the debate because they've been sitting in the rooms too. So the green was simply my suggestion. None of that is official, but I really have been insulted last month and this year at times, where when that gets kind of pushed off as if my opinions or thoughts should not be in writing, because I put because I was nice enough to put it in writing so you could actually just look at it and refer to it. And I'm not meaning this, I'm not attacking personally. I'm just saying, I have it digitally. Right, so I simply have that in writing so that people can just see what the suggestions were. And
That's where it had to be.
And it keeps getting dismissed as if it's not, it's my opinion. And I'm allowed that, y'all are allowed that, each of you are allowed that. That's the problem sometimes, that's also the beauty sometimes. So I am sorry that I have to leave, that I'm in this moment and have to leave, but this is an important thing, and I just wanted to say something about policy, because we do talk down about policy. The reason why policy is there is that protection for everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'm going to let one of our directors, Angie, make a comment. She has something to say about what we're talking about.
Thank you for allowing this discussion, but for 6 months I've been in this position, as you know, and when I started with Westmoreland, I couldn't find any policies. So I knew this was in draft format. So I, like Tracy, did a lot of research, stole from other great libraries, and put one together temporarily until this is decided. I have leaned on my sister directors, okay? They have Gabby, Anita, and Amy. The three of them are highly experienced and seasoned in all of this. What I'd like to propose is that you allow us to develop this policy for your approval. In 6 months, not one of you has visited Westmoreland. I must not have been there. I know Pam, you have, because you were helping me with the trade market demo. I am very alone at that library. I feel isolated. So when I come here to these meetings, I'm looking for your guidance. I'm looking for your wisdom. I'm not getting it. I need this policy. I am using I'm using temporary measures right now for weeding. Thank goodness I have the Red River region, because I'm telling you guys, I feel like they are my boss.
So you didn't have a policy
You don't have
in the director's office?
I'm going to be honest, I don't like the policy.
I don't either, but it's the current.
But it really doesn't say anything.
About what?
How to weed.
There's a whole section in there.
I don't agree with it. All I'm saying is I'm using a good policy, a collection policy, probably Tracy, one you've seen. It doesn't have any of these buzzwords. All I'm saying is allow us to do it. Allow us to develop the policy for you all to discuss. I mean, aren't they the experts? Aren't we supposed to be the ones? We're on the grounds. We're with the patrons. We're with the parents. We're with the kids. That's my recommendation. I also think you all need a true facilitator to help you guys.
I don't know what the setting is, if we're allowed to communicate, but with today being the purpose of discussion, can you kind of outline some of the things that you guys have implemented? And I will say, I'm sorry that you guys have felt like this. Again, it has been clear, we have known, we kicked the can down the road. It is our job to create a policy. So would love some insight from you just right now while we're having this discussion as to what you guys have been operating under, or the policies that you guys have worked with, just to hear it out right here.
Well, I've developed collection, weeding, circulation. I've had to put in procedures from start to end. Cradle to grave, I have policies and procedures for my library.
But see, that you're supposed to operate under.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
This book,
but I
even
don't
if you don't like it.
It's in draft.
No,
it's not.
It's
a legitimate policy. Okay, so let me explain again. I have never had a real orientation.
Okay. That was my question I asked you.
I don't know what I'm being evaluated against. I've had no support. Commissioner Bergdorf, I have not had any support.
I understand it. I understand that.
I do understand that, and when we have had our library meetings, when has any of this been on the agenda? Not the development policy.
For 6 months, I have been testing the waters and keeping my mouth shut.
That's okay.
Because I'm not comfortable speaking up, but today I am, because this is important. You heard the public? Mm-hmm. They're my patrons. I'm there for them. I support them. I support the kids.
So, Angela, you're saying that you do not have a copy of this policy book?
I have different versions of it.
This is the current.
That's
Okay, that's the current one because you all said that in
No,
the
it's not.
email.
It was voted on November of 2024.
I have a 2025 version.
That's
nobody
approved it.
The only one that has been adopted officially.
I wish I would have had a Angela, here are the.
And if it makes you feel better, when we all came onto this board, do you know what we got? Absolutely nothing.
There weren't a lot of.
Well, we could have.
There was a policy in place.
That is one of the things that you wanted to forward that
Yes.
Point of order.
Yes, I agree. Point of order. To your point, Mike Bryan, there were complete policies and complete bylaws. Complete. They have been in flux for the 2 years I've been on this library board. Every other month, the collection and development, the collection committee would have a meeting, and they would just fool with some more things. And I asked repeatedly of the past chairman and the other past chairman for a compiled copy of policies, compiled copies of bylaws. And I was told, oh, we can't print that out for you. We don't have a budget. The library doesn't have a budget. And I said, I'm on budget at the county commission. You go to the Hendersonville Library, and you will go to a library, and you print off a packet for every one of the board members. Well, we're still working on stuff, and Tracy referred to the golden ticket. Where is the golden ticket? We don't have a chairman. We do not have a chairman.
Right.
So, do you have the suitcase that has all of the policies that are, because there are policies in place for everything, but it was constantly being messed with. That's for lack of better term. Constantly in flux. So it's not that we don't have policies, and to the public you need to understand, we have policies. Our library board is working within state law. There's nothing illegal about the actual policy that is time-stamped, revised and adopted November 2024, page 1. It hits everything that the state requires us to have and extra things that don't apply to public libraries. But because, to your point, because this is the policy, whether you like it or not, any of the librarians, you should follow the policy. When you needed guidance, I would hope that you had called. That's why we set up the training for the finance, because we knew you needed that, and we knew because they were catching all in things.
Right.
So, y'all, it didn't even start with you. Didn't start with y'all. So, so we've done things as we've needed to. And to not to belabor any of this, but since you brought it up, I had a mayor of one of the cities ask me, how profitable are your libraries? And I was like, well, they're a net loss. They are. The libraries just cost money. But I was like, we don't have agendas for our library board that focus on the business of the library. I don't know how many books you lose a year. I don't know how many fines that you charge. I don't know how many fines you don't get paid. I don't know how many, I don't know any of the things. And as a county commissioner, and Commissioner Jones back in the corner will understand this, 98% of our job is allocating tax dollars. I don't count as a taxpayer, as an elected official. I don't consider myself that I'm a little bit below the carpet. But y'all are the taxpayers. It's your money. And the libraries cost money. But we're losing books because people don't return them. We have fines. The business of this library is not being dealt with. We keep repeatedly going back to this policy that is almost exactly what Rutherford County's is, which is what Rutherford County was told by constitutional attorney to get rid of, because they were going to get sued. Wasn't that long ago. Because you cannot pick on one subset of the population. You can't. We're going to be sued. Also part of my job, protect the county from lawsuits. So, to the extent that I can. So this policy that you don't have is legal. And so we don't have to keep coming back to this. And because the state requires us to look at it once a year, they may look at it, decide if it's good or bad, and if it's good, keep it, move on. Because the library board we have business to do. Miss Higdon called me a couple of weeks ago, and she said the same thing that you said. We have received no training, no orientation. And I'm very sorry about that. But where was it on the agenda? Where did our chairman take care of that?
And is there any precedence for that? That, to me, is a weakness in our system, that we don't have a precedence for how a new director is onboarded. There's so many things that we need to be addressing. We haven't even polled y'all to say, what would you like for us to be looking at and to addressing, because we can't get past this thing. And again, I go back to the fact that none of these other public library boards felt that it was necessary to go to the extreme. And I will say also, the state requires us to review our policies once a year. It doesn't require us to change it. Does it? I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like we're spinning our wheels a lot, and it's just frustrated everybody.
I have a kind of a crazy notion.
Not any crazier than anything else.
That's fair point, Mike, fair point. So, we clearly need to, look, part of the issue we're having is that I think we do need to have a working discussion when we sit down, and that's what this was supposed to be, sit down and like start at point one and go through the whole thing. And maybe like bring in other suggestions like you were saying, but that is going to be a painstakingly long process. Right. It's not going to happen between now and the next board meeting. Yeah.
And we can't do it in an hour meeting.
We can't do it in an hour meeting. It
has to be a half a day.
A half a day work study. We need to, and that needs to happen where we notice it, and then that's kind of what we do. I get that problem, but in the meantime, what do we do? That's the question. So we do have the existing policy, right here. Yeah. There are maybe a couple of changes that we could propose, like a couple. Let's be conservative about this. That might assuage some of the biggest problems. It's going to solve 95% of my problems, 95% of your problems. We're all going to be 5% unhappy thereabouts. Like you were saying earlier, can we find a middle ground or a place where we can at least start? And then we can have a meeting sometime, another work study to really go in. So part of the thing, and Pam, I go back, you're talking about being in the library with your grandchildren. You can't police them all the time. What I've seen the directors do with content that's sensitive is they put it on these resource shelves, and they're up high. Like an 8-year-old child is not going to imagine, they're not going to bump into one of these books. And we're not talking about many. I mean, I've seen the shelves that you guys have. We're talking this many books. And like Tracy said, it's not just one piece of content. There's some of these that talk about all kinds of sensitive issues. But I think that's what that you guys have been doing, and that seems to be really working. And it doesn't run us into First Amendment problems, but it also protects everybody's strongly held convictions. So if we could just formally authorize the directors to put a shelf together on sensitive issues, which we've already done, we can add that to the policy. One sentence on page 8, right, where it says censorship and access. We can add that. It's library directors are authorized to create a parental resource section in their children's library to ensure parents and guardians maintain access to children's literature that explores potentially sensitive topics. That's a place that's kind of what they just did. We're just codifying it. That's it. We could add that one section. That at least provides, that's for momentum, and then we're going to need to go through this thing. And really kind of like, these policies, that what you were talking about, this seems like a really interesting way to go, because it does separate some of the stuff that doesn't need to be in the collections policy to some of the others, in another policy. But that's a half-day working session.
And I think we got to take it in bites. Trying,
chunk at a time.
because none of us have 6 hours.
Yeah.
We can set an additional meeting and say, we're gonna cover pages this through this today.
And again, like looking at the direction that some of this policy was going, I mean, I love every one of y'all, but it's going to be fine. I'm really nervous about First Amendment violations. We're seeing what's happening in Rutherford County. Their county owes $10,000 and a motion hadn't even been filed yet. $4,000 for one lawyer, $4,000 retainer for another lawyer, and $400 an hour after that. No motion filed yet. That's crap.
Yes, sir.
Could we get, how many counties have you got?
4.
Could you,
We have Johnson City, it's 5.
okay, could
I
you,
can send them to you.
that's good.
Yeah, can you send them to me?
So,
I'll send it to everybody.
to the whole board.
Yeah.
But just to everybody.
And some of them were widely different in their, Wilson County was just that, where Knox County was much more detailed about what they did, and Davidson County was much more detailed, and so was Williamson County. But like I said, they were very consistent on a lot of things. There was, I think it's Williamson County that has in a couple different places that says, just because we have a material in the library does not in any way endorse the ideas that are expressed in those books. And they say that a couple different times. Yeah, we have that in our policy too. And so, to me, that kind of covers all the things. So, but I think that would be a good approach if everybody can kind of have reviewed these and kind of taken the nuggets from there that they liked or whatever, and then us take this in sections, because I do think this is too big a bite to chew in one setting.
Yeah, I know we're not voting, but one proposal I was going to make is to have a collection policy, but then also have the other 2 policies that are on the collection policy that should be there on separate policy. So that we just, when we deal with the collection policy, that's just that one entity, one piece of,
What are the other 2 you're talking about specifically?
Well, there's the collection, and there's,
monetary donations does
Yeah.
not need to
The
be in the
donations
development.
is where it starts, the second.
Okay.
Would be the second policy.
Gotcha, okay.
And then the third policy would be
Yeah.
collection management and evaluation. That could be its own.
yeah, because it doesn't have to do with
That's the
curating.
weeding and.
Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't do with
gotcha.
curating, so it'd be
That's it.
curating,
So,
and then,
I see what you're
We have those 3 separate policies, basically.
Yeah.
And then what we're really dealing with
Yeah.
is the collection policy.
Okay.
And so that's a separate thing. So then it's just a matter of the wording. And I know we're not gonna obviously get this finished. I wish our study session hadn't gone in so many different directions, and I apologize for that. Just when we deal with the collection policy, that's just that one entity, one piece of,
What are the other 2 you're talking about specifically?
well, there's the collection, and there's,
Monetary donations does
Yeah.
not need to
The
be in the
donations
development.
is where it starts, the second
Okay,
would be the second policy.
gotcha, okay.
And then the third policy would
That's-
be
yeah.
collection, management, and evaluation. That could be its own.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be
That's the
curated.
weeding and.
Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't do
gotcha.
curated, so it'd be
That's it.
curating
So
and then,
I see what you're.
We have those three separate policies, basically.
Yeah.
And then what we're really dealing with
Yeah,
is the collection policy.
okay.
And so that's a separate thing. So then it's just a matter of the wording. And I know we're not gonna obviously get this finished. I wish our study session hadn't gone in so many different directions, and I apologize for that. But that would be my proposal, to pop that off, those two, set them aside, and just deal with these 5 pages. And so what that would look like, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can go with this, and I know it's already 6 o'clock, so
and I
I don't
have
want
a
to belabor
commitment by
it,
6:30.
have to leave, so. But I think obviously I'm here, like everybody else is here to stand up for their children and protect their children. When we were homeschooling, we homeschooled all 4 of our kids, and it was a big deal to go to the library, and we would walk in the door and the kids would just take off, and we didn't even think twice about them just taking off and going to wherever they wanted to go in the library. But we've heard from a lot of people in the community that people are afraid to go to the library and let their kids just go because of the different books that they bring to them. So I think that's, and I don't have specific examples of that, but I've just, heard different people in the community. I can see where that would be something where it would be a little bit intimidating to walk in the door and not be able, and have to hold on to your kids to walk them to where they're gonna go. So I think if we have a way where those books are somewhere separate for now, and we can agree on that and get that to be the policy, instead of, because I know the polarizing thing is to get rid of the books. That's the polarizing thing. So, it's better to compromise and get something, like Larry was saying, accomplished, instead of saying, okay, it's just all or nothing. So, as I've been praying about this, I've just felt at peace about just having there be a section of the library where none of these things that are questionable are accessible by kids. I mean, 18 and under, that's what I would propose. But we're not voting, so I wanted to throw that out. Shannon?
So I want to speak to this, and I had 4 boys in 7 years. I homeschooled my kids. We went to the public library in Nashville, not Hendersonville, because I had so many kids and we homeschooled. We could check out so much more because the collection was so much larger. And when we talk about going to the library and just letting our kids run, I never did that, because everybody gets to go to the library. Felons released from jail get to go to the library. There was a homeless man. He was a veteran. He lived in his car, and he lived in his car at the public library in Gillisville. We had a homeless man living in his car in the parking lot at Hendersonville Library. It was reported to us, to our board, a year and a half ago, that he was allowed to sleep in the garden shed of the Friends. He had the key to the shed, the garden shed of the Friends Library, the shed where all the Friends kept their tools, here in Sumner County. I would tell you all, if you don't let your children and your grandchildren, when you have them 4 at a time, and I'm fixing to have my 5th grandchild, so when you go to the grocery store, do you just say, here's your $5, baby? Go do whatever you want. No, because everybody buys groceries. Everybody. We went to an enormous church. I didn't let my kids run around the campus. We do not live in a safe world. And in this building, everybody buys tags. We don't tell somebody who's who looks at child porn at home when they haven't been caught yet. They can't come here because it's a public building. And I know we want our libraries to be safe. And I know that, but you need to, it is your job as a parent, as a guardian over children, to make those hard decisions and do those hard things.
I agree.
So,
to write a policy.
Yeah.
And I understand. We have a policy. We have a written policy that is legal and functioning within the confines of state law. We don't have to do, and we have satisfied Trey Hargett's request.
Our library directors are saying they want clarity and they want guidance, and they're here, and I appreciate them being here.
And we have clarity and guidance that is.
Then why has the policy been on the agenda the past year?
Because the previous chair wanted to insert.
The bottom line is most people here have problems with the policy as it stands now.
Who has read the policy as it stands now? This policy? Then this is the policy we should be editing.
Yes.
Not this policy.
So you have it though. That is an edit.
But you've been, no, honey, you've been on the board so long, and I'm sorry I called everybody, honey, it's not anything like that. You haven't been on the board since last May, where every time we showed up, we had a new highlighted or lined policy. So if we go with editing this one, the one that keeps everybody in check, then we don't have to have any more confusion, is what.
I agree with that. I know I have not been on the board, but the confusion you're speaking to is also the confusion that the directors have. So if nothing else, I know obviously we're not voting on anything today, can we make sure that each director gets the most current, the only current policy that's in place, and emailed version?
It's right here, it's right here.
I put it on the committee meeting.
Yes.
That's how I got it on the supplemental link.
This is on the computer.
It is.
It's on the website.
It's on the web, you.
Yes. Well, the mayor just texted me.
Yeah, it was just this.
Or the language.
All right. So, one other thing about the yellow copy that's been going around, there's, by my count of papers, there's 13 instances where changes have been made to this policy from the current policy that aren't reflected. So there's information that's missing, and there's information that's been added in, that's never been voted on by the board.
Right.
And I agree we need to
like the
return
working.
I've got all of that.
Yes, and this kind of state law.
This one's been floating around for a year in one form or another, but it's been altered from the original in places that aren't annotated. And they're pretty significant changes. Some of them are minor, some of them are significant. So, yeah.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I do agree, because it is confusing, and I just hate it for the directors and the public, the confusion, and for myself, because I haven't been on it long.
No, you didn't cause it. Don't worry about that.
I know, but.
No, we are all as frustrated as you are.
Yes, yes.
But that was trying to.
And that was very helpful, truthfully.
So maybe that's something, we are the current board, and this was a work from the previous, so let's start with what we have and do a review and see what we think needs to be adjusted, and I would welcome any feedback from the directors on areas that they feel are muddled or gray or muddy, that they would like more clarity about in what is the current November 2024. I would welcome any input from you
all of y'all
about those
policies or not? I mean,
We just put them off the committee.
We have this policy, we have that one.
Yes.
That one we have. There are other policies that were brought up during meetings that we were given before the meeting, but then they were changed during the meeting, and we never got the copy that was actually voted on.
Oh, really?
Not just this one.
Not just
Not
this,
just this.
every policy that was worked on.
But they weren't passed.
Yes.
Yes, they were passed
But they were never.
with correction,
But they
but
were
we never got
They
the
wouldn't
corrected
print
copy.
out anything and share.
And it was updated,
That were
right?
online, that were sent on the agenda, were edited before the meeting, but after they've been posted on the agenda, they brought them in with changes.
The
There were
changes were
posted,
voted
and
on.
they made changes at the meeting,
But then it was never published.
and
never
nothing
got
was published.
That's why I think we gotta have a starting point.
That's pretty wild.
And if we can start here. Yeah.
Sound like we've been scrambling eggs for a while.
We need to have y'all study on not just collection development, we can start there, but in general, I think there's a variety of things that we need to see. Because, as Angela pointed out earlier, you are the expert, so you do
We're
see
talking
the.
red policy, whether it's,
Yeah.
Never have nobody frown stickers on the outside.
I've never even seen those.
Yeah.
And those are more common.
Did you?
I have like edited copies, but I don't have the actual.
First year.
And there
First year
doesn't
Patty
seem to be,
You get that on the
and what I can find in the
I didn't
people
check, I don't think I did, but I'll look.
a digital version of this in its entirety. If you read and start with the bylaws and things, the print changes, and the size changes, and the font changes. And so, there's no page numbers a lot of times. And so, I mean, I think we have a lot of heavy lifting just to get things on a very transparent, everybody knows the same field
Everybody's talking about
of
the same
things.
thing. Yeah.
That'd be good.
So that we can circumvent some of the hiccups that have occurred intentionally, unintentionally, whatever. We just gotta start where we are.
For sure.
And go forward.
And to that point, Mr. Bryan, you said in your email that you wanted to vote on this policy in May. Yet we,
That was the intent, because I thought we could get way
it,
more done.
but in order to satisfy that 95% happy, 5% not happy, could we, since nobody's taking minutes, could we go ahead and add, Secretary Wasilowski, could we go ahead and add the sentence from Paul
in May?
In May, and that it, and then let's move to, we have to elect officers. We have budget hearings will be at the end of May. We have the business of the library. It is determined that we have a policy that's functioning and in place, and go from there. And I don't know where it would go.
It would go right here.
Could we do that?
Sure.
And that way, they have guidance. They already have the,
Yeah, I like the
Our policy, and I would add that sentence after it. Because that gives,
We should.
that codifies what you all are doing.
I'm trying to figure out where we're at.
And it's not perfect, but it's a stopgap, but then we've got to get the rest of the stuff.
We didn't tell her, we didn't tell the new employees, we didn't tell the people on the board. Just everything fits, I mean, it's getting ready for talks. Let's go home.
wait, no, I mean, yeah.
Yes,
And add that, and then
it would go,
I would welcome an email from our library directors for our May meeting. I don't want your reports. I want, the rest of the board may disagree with me. I don't want your, email your stats, that's fine. I want an email from y'all that I'm sorry, it falls to you to set the agenda as the vice chairman, in lieu of our chairman, and set the agenda based on things they need us to talk about. Westmoreland has one or two. I know, Angela, you send long packets, but pick one or two things that y'all need us to talk about in that May meeting, and let us focus on what our libraries need from this board in that May meeting.
You mean like as a group? You're saying like?
No, I'll get it. Well, yes, Jonathan has two things. No more than two, so you better pick. Because no, I'm not making fun of it.
I have one, can I give Gabby one of mine?
Yeah, no sharing points.
Whatever it is you need help with from the board.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would like to do some type of.
So we can focus.
Like the vote thing, like we got an email from, county commission saying, we get it or.
Right.
Well, I can tell you right now that's not going to change. But you're welcome to discuss it. You are welcome to discuss that.
I would like to know how that's going to affect what y'all's plan was, because when I read that, I thought, well, I wonder how that affects their bigger plan of things. I would be curious to know. I'll get what Shane is saying. Right, I'm going to say.
Magical scheduling.
As for work
So,
on the.
but we'll talk.
If y'all are okay and we can think on it, if we can get that on the agenda as at least we vote as a band-aid, yeah, up or down vote. And then getting to work at the nitty-gritty of this level, like if you're going to share those policy runs, we can all work. Could we maybe set that date at some point?
And we are the committee, so we can have a committee meeting.
It's gonna probably need to be broken down in committee, because this is not productive to me. It feels like it's just kind of a prolonged, everybody,
Well, we need to have a discussion about it.
Breaking
it down into chunks.
I think an open committee would be, because I don't want to exclude anyone. That's cool.
Well, it's not about excluding anyone, it's about getting really efficient and down to the nitty-gritty, and then when we come to the board with the policy, then that policy can be voted on by the board, and anything can
Well, we can
change.
just set it as a committee meeting, and if he chooses to come, Because a committee meeting
Can come down to that.
I would almost prefer that, because part of the problem we've gotten into, especially with this policy, was when it was written, like it was written by a committee that I've been sitting in here, I would argue about almost all of these things. Not all of them.
Well, of course, anything that you're gonna read, somebody else wrote, you're gonna have your own opinion about.
Yeah, but I think an open committee, so we're not letting anybody, if you wanna come to it, that's great, and if you can't make it, that's okay too, and I would like to write it in mind where, it gets 100% like yes vote. I also know that's a difficult thing to do.
I got one hang up, you know what it is.
I know exactly what yours is, Mr. Henry, I know exactly what it is, but
Post that kind of language on
yeah.
the county website.
Maybe we can add that to the agenda for me, like how we're gonna tackle this or something like that. I would, because I want everybody's voice at the table.
It just needs to get settled once and for all, and we need to put it to rest.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really.
Surely as many wordsmiths as we got professors in Sumner County, they come up with something, leave off some of that, modify that
I
language.
think we can keep.
I believe
think
that's
we can
right.
figure that.
I believe you can clean that up.
But you're saying add parental resource shelf for next meeting?
Next
So
week,
vote on
yeah.
to add that or not.
Yeah.
That's something, that's blue, done.
Well, and they've done it, and I'm telling you, it seems to be working. And like, I've seen these shelves, and I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable with this, I think y'all do.
Well, nobody's complained about anything specific.
Not yet, and there's a process in place if they do have a complaint. There's a way to do it, so.
And we'll take it seriously.
We absolutely.
Motion to adjourn.
Do you have anything?
Amen. Second.
I wanna know where your head is.
I think we start with clarity for the directors. I think a policy needs to be in place. I understand Larry's concerns, but I do think we need to define sexually explicit That's kind of where I'm at. I feel like we're all on the same page of getting back to a blank slate though, and that is good news, because there has been a lot of confusion. It's confused the public, it's confused us, and that's not fair, because we as a board, I'll take accountability. I should know better than to just, this is what we've got, this is what we're working with. So, we're on the same page there. I don't know, the thing that I would like to do is actually schedule the date to where we can have that. That way it doesn't get too far ahead of us and we lose sight of it and we forget and we move on. So we'd love to schedule when we can sit down and kind of pick it apart.
So that should be another agenda item for May, is that accurate, right? I agree with Riley on that. In May, that needs to be on the agenda, that we will set the next date.
Because we don't,
discuss that.
because we don't meet in June.
Yeah, I'll put this in my minutes.
I know you're just gonna chat GPT them. By the way, your minutes have lots of errors.
No, it is May.
How about I move to adjourn? Do you allow that, sir?